will now introduce Ross Lesson 49. 49.1, Indefinite Personal Subject. Hebrew uses the third person singular, the third person plural, plural participles, or rarely second person singular to indicate that the performer is undetermined. Such constructions may be translated as passives or with an indefinite one. Example: Genesis 11 and verse 9. Kara Shemah Babel. Its name Babel, but then you have Kara, and you would think that it would be translated he calls, or called its name Babel, but there is no he in the vicinity that would be the logical subject, and so the way you can translate it is that one called its name Babel, or again, that could be rephrased as a passive. Its name was called Babel, or it was named Babel. But literally, if you want to be literal, you translate it not he, but one called its name Babel. Another example is in Genesis 2:20. Ule Adam lo matzah eitzer kenegdo. But as for Adam, one did not find a helper corresponding to him. I guess would be a way of doing kenegdo. Now, here the issue is the subject of matzah. Matzah would normally be translated he found, but it's impersonal. One did not find, and hence you can translate it passive, there was not found. This kind of formulation will also occur in plurals. Plural forms will also sometimes do the same thing. Here I've gone to Watke O'Connor, Hebrew syntax. And here he gives you an example of a third person plural pronoun with an active verb that's being used as if it were passive. Ki'im haba'er ha-hi, because from that well Yashku ha-adarim, they watered the flocks. Now, they watered the flocks could be translated passively. Christian Standard Bible actually does. He looked and saw, well, 3 flocks of sheep were lying there because the sheep were watered from this well. Well, they watered, but who's the they? It's like they say it's going to rain tomorrow. It's an indefinite kind of they. Same thing with Jeremiah 38:23. Ve'et kol nasheka ve'et baneka. Direct object marker comes first. All your wives and all your sons, and then you get a participle, Hithiel participle, Motzi'im el ha-kasdim. And so here's the masculine plural participle, Hithiel, from Yatzah, to go forth. They will cause, and then the object was first, all your wives and all your sons to go forth, unto ha-kasdim, unto the Chaldeans or the Babylonians. And again, who is this they? The they is an indefinite they, and you could translate it as a passive. All your wives and your children will be brought out to the Chaldeans. Again, since it's an impersonal construction, it can be treated as a passive if that seems to be more fluent translation. I move on to 49.2, impersonal subject. Hebrew uses the third masculine singular or third feminine singular to denote a phenomenon of nature or a neuter entity, to express personal feelings or to express a general idea. Example from Genesis 4 and verse 5. Vayichar l'Ka'an Kayan Ma'od. And it was hot. That's a imperfect form from hara. It was hot to Cain, Ma'od, exceeding. It was hot to Cain exceedingly, but hot is used metaphorically of anger. What it means is that Cain was very angry. But it uses this impersonal formulation, it was hot, or it burned. Genesis 4:26. Az hu chal likro b'shem Adonai. Then, az, and then you have a hafal perfect, huchal, chalal can mean to begin in the hiphil. So then one began lirot, to call b'shem Adonai, upon the name of the Lord. Then one began, or it was begun. We've got to make it passive, actually. It was begun to call on the name of the Lord, but it means people began to call on the name of the Lord. Now, again, the form is singular, and it's passive. And there's various ways you could paraphrase it. You could say, at that time, calling upon the name of the Lord began, or something like that. But anyway, it's literally, it was begun to call on the name of the Lord, and that has to be rephrased. Usually translations say people began to call on the name of the Lord. Again, the Christian Standard Bible does that. Let me say a little more about the Aramaic Targums. In post-exilic Judaism, Aramaic replaced Hebrew as the common language. Thus, in the synagogue, it became necessary to translate Scripture into Aramaic so that common people could understand the Hebrew reading. Well, this Aramaic translation, called a Targum, Targum actually means translation. This Aramaic translation was an oral presentation. Written Targums nonetheless date back to the beginning of the Christian era. Because the translations differed from place to place, it was not surprising that a standard Targum did not develop, but rather a series of Aramaic translations. The symbol, and you can tell me what that looks like to you, the symbol in the critical apparatus of Biblia Hebraica Stuttgartensia represents the reading from the Targums. And so if you see this symbol, that will be what is called the Targum Onkelos. It was the authoritative Targum of the Pentateuch. The final form, its final form, which attempts to translate the Hebrew literally, was established in Babylon by the 5th century of the Christian era. So it's not super early, but nonetheless it became the standard one, and it was no doubt based on earlier translations. But then you have that same symbol with a J by it. That would be the Targum of Pseudo-Jonathan. It's called Pseudo-Jonathan because it's ascribed to a certain Jonathan, but probably Jonathan didn't write it. But anyway, it's also called the Targum Yerushalmi first, which had its beginning in pre-Christian times, and it represents a Palestinian Targum revised from Onkelos. And then you have the Targum with a little F symbol by it. Targum Jonathan is the authoritative Targum of the prophets, and as with Onkelos, this text was developed carefully until its completion by the 5th century of the Christian era. But anyway, this Targum Jonathan refers to a 12th century manuscript of this Targum. Well, that's the introductory grammar part of lesson 49, and we will stop here.